So, I did a what if Deku was Nezuko from Demon Slayer a maybe a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago. I don't know, but I went over the story to continue it, and I did not like where I was taking it. So, we start off in the woods, and it's a small cottage, and it's just been attacked by a villain. And there's a legend of a family of demons living there, and that these demons have the first quirks and they can live forever. So, the few people who've actually seen them are the wielders of One for All, because they are sent up there to train. They are sent up there to train by the demons of the woods that live in a small cottage that apparently eat civilians and children for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this story starts off with Nana Shimura telling uh, Toshinori Yagi that now that you have my quirk, I want you to go to Mount Fuji and find the cottage in the woods. And Toshinori says, "Isn't that a myth?" And she goes, "Nope." And he pales, going, "Is the demon real?" And she goes, "Hell no." He goes, "And what's up there?" And she goes, "What's up there is a really old man who's probably one of the first quirk wielders." So Toshinori walks up there and gets a lesson and learns how to use One for All, and he's tasked to come back every 2 months to get more training. And if he doesn't come back every 2 months, he's forever banished from this mountain, or he will be thoroughly punished. And him knowing the training that he was put through and the old man's strength, says, "Yes, sir, I'll be back in 2 months, and every 2 months I'll come and visit." And the old man says, "Good, now go." So he's tasked to go back every 2 months, but he's still the number one hero. And all the villains know that every 2 months the number one hero is gone for a day, or maybe 2 days, and that those are the times that they have to attack. And our story starts off 20 years after this, and yes, All Might's 50 when it's the canon time, and Toshinori's going up for a bi-monthly basis, and he sees this young lady and this young man sitting on the porch, and they greet Toshinori and say, "Your obligation to come has been fulfilled. He has finally passed, and he has given you this." And he gives Toshinori, they give Toshinori two gloves, and he goes, "What is this?" And they say, "The only thing that can stop us from going on a rampage." And All Might goes, "What do you mean going on a rampage?" And they say, "Every night there's a chance of us going on a rampage, and there's a chance of us going down the mountain and actually killing people." And they say that's why we stay up here 90% of the time. And it gets worse the older we are. That's why he told you to come every 2 months, because that's when he goes on a rampage, when he doesn't see a new face. And all of our quirks that are demon related have a very nasty side effect if we don't see someone or know someone in the outside world and get an update. And they say that they're expecting a child soon, and hopefully this child will become a hero and not have a side effect as bad as ours. And so they say, instead of coming back every once 2 months, you have to come back every year. And they say we've slowly been extending our time of not going on a rampage for a long time. And Toshinori says, okay, I'll come back every year. 10 years later, since he hasn't been going back every 2 months, he's forgotten about his promise. And he finally remembers to go back, and he's like, crap. Oh God, I hope they're okay. And he gets there and he sees a massacre and a little kid crying. And he picks up this little kid and says, what's your name? And she says, Nezuko. And she points at a little kid next to her and says, is Tanjiro. And All Might sees that this little kid is still breathing. And he asks, what happened here? And she says, we lost control. And All Might, he pales a little, saying, okay, I'll take care of you. And he then takes them to his house and calls up Aizawa, saying, I can't take care of these 2 kids, but I have an obligation to help them because their parents helped me and their grandfather helped me too. And Aizawa says, okay, that's not my problem. And he goes, I know you've wanted kids for a long time, and I know your wife will like them. And him having it on speaker, or All Might hear is, well, like what? In the background, and Aizawa saying nothing. And she goes, I heard children. And All Might says, yes, you did hear children correctly. I am giving you an option to adopt 2 children that are part of a family that helped me when I was before I became a hero. And this woman says, okay, we'll adopt them. And Aizawa goes, what the hell? Aren't we supposed to discuss this? And she goes, there's no discussion. You wanted children, I wanted children. You know my condition. And he goes, yeah, there is a biological condition that makes women infertile so they can't have children. And I feel bad for them. There's nothing we can do, and that's sad, but so this woman is one of them, and she says that they will adopt. And a week later, Nezuko and Tanjiro have been introduced to Nezuko looks like she's 4, by the way, and Tanjiro looks like he's 5, but Nezuko is actually older. So All Might walks up to Aizawa's house and rings the doorbell. Nezuko and Tanjiro are in his arms. Well, Nezuko's on his shoulder and Tanjiro's in his arms. And Aizawa opens the door and says, so you're finally here. And he welcomes them all inside. And All Might says, I feel bad for this, but I have to go to the US again and finish some stuff there before I am free to take care of them. And he goes, I understand. You need to do some hero work, and I will take care of them until you get back. So Aizawa adopts Nezuko, and the day of him writing up the paper, he asks Nezuko what her age is, and she says 10. And Aizawa looks at her and goes, what? And she goes, yeah, I'm 10. And she grows to the size of a 10-year-old. And Aizawa goes, we're going to have to get you checked out for your quirk. And she goes, okay. And Aizawa, later that day, is at the quirk doctor. And the quirk doctor says that hers is called Demon Art. And his is called Demon Mark. Mark of the Demon Slayer. And Aizawa asks what's the difference, and the doctor says that she has powers that resemble a demon's powers, and she has another form that's not human, and he points at Tanjiro and says that he has the ability to master what some martial artists call a breathing style that is almost impossible to master to normal people. And only people with the ability to hold their breath for a while or control their breath constantly have the ability to do so, and his Demon Slayer mark is one of those abilities to increase his chances of learning breathing styles, breathing techniques. And with what his demon mark does, he also gains an increased skull. Aizawa goes, "What do you mean an increased skull?" And Nezuko is currently asleep, and Tanjiro, who's also currently asleep in the office, he takes a clipboard and drops it on Tanjiro's head and says, "You throw a rock at his head and it won't do nothing." And Aizawa goes, "What the hell?" And the doctor goes, "He's fine. Even a 100% All Might punch can't do anything to his head." And we skip now to 6 years from then, and All Might comes back, and finally comes back and is injured because 3 years into the adopted section, All Might is injured from the fight with All For One, and in America he was injured, not in Japan. And All For One got out not unscathed. He's severely injured, and the one place that All For One will never go is Mount Fuji, because he thinks that the people are still there. So it's now the last day of middle school for Nezuko, and she's not been going to the middle school with Bakugo. She's not been going to a middle school with anybody, and she's not shown anybody her quirk or practiced her quirk with anybody. But she does still look like a 4-year-old. And everybody thought that was strange. So it's now the 10-month training arc, and Aizawa has been training Nezuko in hand-to-hand combat, and Tanjiro has been sent to a secluded section of a forest and to talk with a random dude that knows a breathing style, and he goes there for 2 months, and he comes back and he has the breathing style mastered. Then he's tasked to go to middle school. So it's now Tanjiro's in middle school, and Nezuko is still on the 10-month training arc. So Nezuko has completely mastered her quirk, and Aizawa says, "I can give you a recommendation if you want, or do you want to take the entrance exams?" And she says, "I would like a recommendation because I don't know if I'll scare anybody with my quirk." And he goes, "Okay." And Aizawa goes, "I will send in a recommendation in a few minutes, and Nezu will probably approve you, and you'll just have to take a written test." And she goes, "Okay, I will do that." And she's still training with her quirk during that 10 months, and when it's finally time to go to school, she's the top scorer in the written test and the top scorer of the recommendations. And Aizawa, knowing that she's stronger than anybody in class, goes up to Nezuko before they leave and says, "I know you're stronger than anybody in class, but you're going to have to hold back a lot." And she goes, "Why?" And he goes, "Because people don't understand you like I do, or All Might." She goes, "All Might? Who's All Might?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I haven't told you about heroes." Anyway, this is a high school where you train to become heroes. And she goes, what is a hero? And he goes, a hero is someone who risks life and limb, literally, and he points at his limb and says, limbs, if you chop off my arm, I would definitely give it up to save someone's life, to save people's lives. And he explains what a hero is and what a true hero is, and says that the highest honor a hero could be is called a true hero. And that's really what you're going for. You don't go for the money. That's just the benefit. You don't go for the money. You go for the lives that you save. That's your job, and that's what you want to be paid in. The feeling of success from saving lives. And so she goes, okay, I will definitely try my hardest. And she arrives to school like this. So she does have the uniform underneath, but she has a jacket over the entire thing, covering even the skirt. I'll be right back. So now we're going to get to the nitty gritty of the what if. So before I continue with the first day of UA, I have to talk about Nezuko's quirk a little bit more. So she has all the abilities of her demon form in Demon Slayer, and she doesn't have to not eat. Or she has to eat still, but she sleeps shorter amount of times, and she prefers to be in the dark, not the sunlight. But she has no affliction to the sunlight. And her fire control, she has to draw a little bit of her own blood to activate it. So she draws a little bit of blood, and that blood catches fire, and she can spread the fire wherever she wants. But that's it. That's all I'm changing, and the rest of her abilities are there. The size manipulation, the strength increase, everything is still there. So, first day of UA, and she walks in, and she hears Bakugo and Ida arguing, and she just ignores it. And she goes into the back and grabs a sleeping bag from her backpack and gets into it and starts sleeping. And Ida, seeing this, is like, how disrespectful for you to sleep before class starts. And she just wakes up and flips him off and then goes back to sleep. And Bakugo, seeing this, laughs his ass off because he's like, at least someone knows what to do with you. And Ida, looking offended, just ignores her then and goes back to scolding Bakugo. Hold on. Okay. He went back to scolding Bakugo, and 5 minutes later, the bell doesn't ring, but it's the start of class. Nezuko wakes up and unzips the sleeping bag and sits in her seat, and it's like 1, 2, 3, and is counting in her head. And Ida, seeing that she's awake, just ignores her and continues scolding Bakugo and greeting himself to the other students. And Uraraka, who was trapped under the rubble, does not get enough points to join class. But Tetsu does, and Ibara does. So Uraraka and Aoyama are not in class. So it's now time for Aizawa to wake up. And Izumi, having the senses of Aizawa, because Aizawa taught her, knows that Aizawa's behind his desk and he's currently sleeping. So when Aizawa finally wakes up and he's hearing everybody talking, he just rolls out of class in his sleeping bag and waits for them to notice him. And when they finally notice him, Nezuko says, "Damn, took you 2 minutes to notice, Dad?" And they hear this and go, "Wait, what, Dad?" And she goes, "Yeah, he's my adoptive father." And they go, "Oh, okay." And they're like, "Wait, he?" And the rest of the class looks at the door and sees Aizawa. And the only person who actually noticed Aizawa was Bakugo, and he just went when he noticed, and that's why Izumi, or not Izumi, damn it, I just did a female, what if Deku was female? Canon style. And Bakugo just went, which made Nezuko go on a tangent. And it's now time for him to introduce himself. So he introduces himself and says, "Now you guys have to go to the changing room." And Nezuko, getting up with a backpack still on, picks up her sleeping bag and without looking behind her, puts it in her backpack, zips it up, and goes on her way. And they all look at her like, "What the hell is she?" And he's like, "God damn it, follow her!" And they're like, "Yes, Sensei," and go. And they follow Nezuko, and the females join her in the girls' locker room, and she looks at them and says, "Does anybody have some kind of creation quirk?" And Momo says, "My quirk is named Creation. What do you need?" And she goes, "Do you know the chemical composition or do you have the ability to make caulking?" And she goes, "What?" And she goes, "That trim stuff that you use for installation of tiles." And Momo goes, "Oh, yeah, I understood that." And she goes, "Yeah, do you know how to make it?" And Momo goes, "No, why?" And she points to Jiro and says, "Jab him in the eye in 3, 2, 1." And Jiro immediately jabs through the hole, and they hear a ow from the other side of the hole, and Mineta is currently on the ground with a red eye from Jiro stabbing him in the eye, and says, "That is why." And they ask, "Jiro, when did you notice the hole?" And she goes, "When her," and points at Nezuko, "said if you had any caulking, I looked for anything out of ordinary and I saw the hole." And Momo goes, "Yeah, I know how to make it." And she makes a little bit of it on her finger and puts it in the hole, and then makes a piece of plastic on her finger so it comes off, the caulking comes off of her finger. And they go out, and Mineta is still rubbing his eye because it hurts from being stabbed by Jiro. And it's now time for the ball throw, and Aizawa looks at Izumi, and Izumi gives him a knowing nod. And he throws the ball to Izumi and says, "You're up." And she walks to the circle and says, my longest throw in middle school was 86 meters. And Aizawa says, "Good, now use your quirk." And Izumi, using just the size manipulation, grows from a 4-year-old to a 16-year-old. Yeah, 16-year-old. And everybody's like, "Wait, what?" And Mineta sees the size of the breasts and starts drooling. And Nezuko, who starts to get hungry, grabs the piece of bamboo that was around her neck and starts biting it. And they're like, what's that for?" And then when she goes back to 4-year-old state, Aizawa pulls out a bar of chocolate and gives it to Nezuko, and Nezuko jumps for joy and grabs it, pulls the piece of bamboo out of her mouth, and starts eating chocolate. And Nezuko says, "My quirk makes me really hungry, and depending on what I do with my quirk," and she stops herself, and Aizawa says, "Okay, next person, Bakugo Katsuki." And everybody's like, "Wait, what?" And Bakugo, not even caring. Oh, God damn it. I have to sneeze. Oh, yeah, it's sneeze. Oh, my God. I hate freaking trying not being able to sneeze. But he says, God, okay, on to Bakugo Katsuki. And they're like, what the hell? Why is he stopping us? And he gives an Izumi of the annoyed look. And Izumi shivers a little and goes, okay, I'll go. And she just says, okay, I'll go. And she walks off. And they're like, where is she going? And he goes, I know her abilities already. And I don't know yours. And they go, makes sense. And then he says, out of the people who are here, the last person gets expelled. And Momo, still thinking it's a farce, and everybody else not thinking that, tries their hardest except for Momo. And Momo is the second to last this time. And Minetta's still last. And Aizawa says, you are expelled, Minetta. And Minetta's like, and he starts groveling and begging, and he goes, I don't care, you are expelled. And Momo's like, wait, what? I thought you were joking. He goes, hell no, I never joke about being a hero. And Bakugo, who's the hero geek in this one, goes, yeah, it's just like you, Eraser. And he goes, what do you mean it's just like me? And Bakugo goes on a tangent of your past hero activities and how you had complete right to kill that man. And Aizawa, hearing this, is like, you're my favorite student. And just plainly says that. And he goes, I don't give a fuck. He still has that attitude, but he's the hero nerd. So it's the end of the day, and Aizawa says, it's after lunch. It's time for you to go to your hero training, and you can count me out. And he goes and gets into his sleeping bag, flops on the floor, and goes to sleep. And Nezuko finally walks into the room, pulls her sleeping bag out of her backpack, and gets into it, and flops on the floor, and goes to sleep. Next to Aizawa. And then all of a sudden they hear, I'm here, coming through the door like a normal person. And Nezu, being the little child and acting like a little child that she does, starts hissing like a cat. And Aizawa, hearing this, starts to laugh, and they hear laughter, and he pats Nezuko's head, calming her down slightly, or telling her that it's fine. So Nezuko is hissing like a cat, and Aizawa's laughing his butt off. And All Might is now scared of Nezuko because he doesn't want to hurt a little kid, and he hears cat hissing, and he has a scratch on his shoulder from a cat that he tried to save a long time ago, and now he's a little scared of cats. And Bakugo saw All Might flinch slightly when he heard the hissing. Just shoves it in the back of his mind, saying, I'll put that in my notebook later. And All Might says, young Aizawa, you must come with us and join us for training. And she goes, no, and goes to sleep immediately. And he goes, okay, fine. And like, what? And he goes, one of you was just expelled. There was 20 people in this class, and one of you was just expelled. If we brought her along, it would be uneven, and we don't like uneven numbers. And he goes, true. But still, what? So he goes, no, let's go. And he goes, this is going to be a 1v1 hero training. And they say, yay, and get all happy about it. But then he says, but you have a limitation. And they all look at him like he's crazy, and he goes, "Don't worry, this limitation's perfectly normal. You'll find it in your everyday life." And he says, "This limitation is you can only do hand to hand. No quirks." And they go, okay. And it goes basically to canon with the winners winning and the losers losing, except for the Bakugo versus Tetsu. Except for Bakugo versus Tetsu. Because Tetsu has a hardening quirk, so his body's naturally a little harder than normal. So Bakugo is completely outmatched by Tetsu's hand to hand. So Bakugo still technically loses, but Tetsu wins. And All Might says, "Good. Now that you all have warmed up, it's time for the real training." And they all look at him like, "What do you mean real training?" He goes, "My master gave me 10 times this for my training." And he says, "Now we must run the entire school 3 times." And they go, "Ugh." Because if you guys don't know, each of those cities is, I think it said 1 kilometer long, or 1 square kilometer, each of those training cities for um UA. So they're spread apart like with a few hundred meters, and the school itself, not including the dorm area, which is still there, is roughly 1 kilometer, 1 square kilometer. So it's really freaking far. So when All Might said that they're doing a run, Nezuko finally walks out and is in her PE uniform, and she still has a backpack on. She has not taken the backpack off, except for to get changed, and everybody's like, "What's in that backpack?" And All Might says, "So, what weight are you on this time now, young Aizawa?" And Nezuko holds out her backpack, and All Might takes it from her, and his hand drops like a stone and starts lifting it up and goes, "Oh, you're very strong." And they see his hand shaking, and he hands the backpack back, and Nezuko picks it up with one hand and puts it back on. And they go, "The hell are you?" And Nezuko goes, "I am a Nezuko." Then shrinks to the 4-year-old state and starts running. A little bit faster than a normal human speed. And they're like, "Is she always like that?" And All Might goes, "Yep, that's her favorite state. And we call it the child state." And it somehow regresses her mental state a little bit. That when she sees sweets and he pulls out a chocolate bar, all of a sudden Nezuko appears right in front of him. She does that. And he gives her the chocolate bar and pats her head and says, "Okay, you can continue your run." And she starts running again. And the normal time it takes someone to run, I'm going to say 10 square kilometers, 40 kilometers. The normal time it takes someone to run 40 kilometers 3 times, half that. And that's how long it took Nezuko in the 4-year-old state to do. So it's now the next day, and Aizawa says that you have to give these papers to your parents, and we'll be going to the USJ. And Nezuko hops up and down and says, "The unforeseen simulation joint?" And so it starts laughing. He says, "Yep." And everybody's like, "Wait, what's the unforeseen simulation joint?" And Nezuko goes, "Bruh." And starts jumping up and down, happy again. And before they leave, because it's the next week and it's on the Friday of the next week they're supposed to go. Before they leave, 13 comes into class and greets them, and a few of them nerd out over her, and Bach goes, "Shh," but is silently geeking out in his head. And now they're on the bus, and 13's giving her speech on the bus. And when they finally get there, they're down the stairs when the portal opens. And Nezuko, seeing the portal open, scratches her arm just a tiny bit and throws it out, and the blood, while it's in the air, catches fire, and the fire spreads out into a ring. So all these students are now protected, with the villains being stuck in the ring, and the dome going around them, going around Nezuko, Aizawa, and 13. And the students are outside the dome, and Tetsu goes into metal form and goes near it, and he sees that his hand is starting to turn red. If anybody knows what happens when metal turns red, he pulls his hand back as fast as possible and says, "Don't touch that." And they go, "Why?" And he shows the red metal hand, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And before Kurogiri could escape the bubble, something grabs him by the head and slams him into the ground, completely incapacitating Kurogiri. And Shigaraki saw that Kurogiri is now out of it. With Shigaraki, smartly, he was smart about this, brought out the Nomu immediately. And all the villains are currently trapped in this small bubble, and are slowly being surrounded by this red flame. It's the white red flame that you see in the anime. And they see this red flame, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" So one of them, who has a hardening quirk like Tetsu's, but instead of being iron, he's steel. And his is hardening with stainless steel, so anything dropped on him while he's in his hardening mode just slides right off. So he puts his hand near it in hardening mode, and it heats up faster than Tetsu's, because Tetsu's is pure iron in this. And pure iron is harder to heat up. When it has impurities, it's easy to heat up. But when it's pure iron, it's harder to heat up. But it's really bendable, though. So, the villain is immediately saying, "Don't touch the flames, or you'll get hurt really badly." And then Nezuko sees this giant creature and is like, that doesn't look human. Points at it and looks at Aizawa, and Aizawa gives her a yes nod of, "You can go play with it," basically. And Nezuko grows to the size of a 20-year-old and channels her basically adoptive mother's personality, the sadistic BDSM personality that her mother has. Yes, her adoptive mother is Midnight, and she starts to feel hungry, and she puts the piece of bamboo in her mouth. And her parents said that no matter what you do, you cannot have any meat, no matter what you do. And she's taken that to heart, so she's not eaten any animal meat or any meat at all. She's been strictly vegetarian. And so what was it now? It's So she's currently beating the crap out of the Nomu, and she channels her demon state. So the piece of bamboo is still in her mouth, but she's in demon state now. So the markings appear, and she completely, utterly annihilates the Nomu, and then burns it to ashes. And Shigaraki sees this and tries to walk towards Kurogiri, but then a flame wall goes in between them. So now that the cops get there, they see the flame dome, and they yell over the roar of the fire, saying that the police are here and we're here to take the villains. Aizawa says good, and he tells Nezuko to drop the barrier, the fire barrier, and she reluctantly does, and then she promptly turns into a 4-year-old and passes out with the piece of bamboo stuck in her mouth. It's now yeah, that works. It's now a day after, and Aizawa still had the injury on his arm because of him trying to fight off some of the villains, and Shigaraki's like, oh, I just want to kill him. So he grabs Aizawa's arm. So Aizawa's arm still decayed a little, and Aizawa has a bandaged right arm. Right arm. And is trying not to yell out in pain because of how much it hurts. But he's currently sleeping on the floor in his classroom, waiting for them to join him. And Nezuko walks in and has a black sleeping bag with her and lays it on the ground and points at it and says, "For you." And then pulls out a new sleeping bag for her that is blue, and she gets in it and flops on the ground, and it looks fluffier to him. So he gets out of his yellow sleeping bag, which is thin and doesn't really doesn't really keep him warm anymore. And he gets into this new black one, and surprisingly comfy. And he immediately falls asleep in it, and 10 minutes later, he's being shaken awake by Nezuko because he is so passed out that he can't wake up while he's in this sleeping bag. And Nezuko finally gets him up, and he wakes up like a normal person instead of the zombie he was. So I'm going to end it here for this part. If you guys like this part, or do you want me to finish the other part, tell me in the comments. But if you like my content and you like this video, please think about subscribing and liking. And if you really want to stay up to date with my content, please hit that bell icon. Doesn't help me, it helps you. So, yeah. Bye.